breaks every covenant of marriage and love and parenthood.
It is a crime that has shocked the nation. The Colorado man who pled guilty to murdering his young family, now sentenced to 3 life sentences. Monday in court, an emotional and dramatic showdown where he faced his wife's family and his own.
Every day of your life, and I hope you see that every time you close your eyes at night. Prison is too good for you. May the courts have no mercy on you. You're an evil monster.
It's like a Scott Peterson situation all over again. That's what the police are telling us. That this guy was having an affair, he wanted a different life, and he didn't want that wife, and he didn't want those children. You tell me if the wife was the one who was taking the lives of these little girls, and he was so enraged.
Meet 34-year-old Shanann Watts.
Hey guys, we're here from the boat today.
A social media maven and master of the digital stage.
I am so excited. I'm thriving with you. I am confident. I am determined and I'm successful.
She was fun, full of life. She did so many things. She had her hand in everything. She was amazing.
This morning with a dramatic new twist in the Colorado murder case that has caught national attention. The man accused of murdering his wife and family claims he killed his wife after she strangled their daughters.
Good morning. According to an arrest affidavit, Christopher Watts says he was having an affair with a co-worker, and he admits he killed his wife, but says he did not kill his girls.
After initially denying involvement in his family's disappearance, Christopher Watts allegedly told investigators his pregnant wife Shanann killed their 2 daughters, 4-year-old Bella and 3-year-old Celeste.
I have confidence in the fact that if you had nothing to do with this disappearance, like, we're going to find that out today. And obviously, I hope that, if you did have something to do with their disappearance, it would be really stupid for you to come in and take a polygraph today, right? Like, it would be really dumb. Like, you should not be here right now sitting in this chair if you had anything to do with Shanann and the little girl's disappearance.
According to a newly unsealed arrest affidavit, Watts claims that moments after he told her he wanted a separation, he observed her on a baby monitor actively strangling their younger daughter, while their older daughter was sprawled out on her bed and blue. He claims he then went into a rage and ultimately strangled Shanann to death.
This is a horrible loan.
Neighbor Kelly Trippy is furious Watts claims Shanann killed their children.
Finally in prison in February 2019, while being interviewed by law enforcement, he admitted to how he killed the girls himself. And he also detailed that account even further in some of his letters to Sherilyn Cato, an author he reached out to personally to record his side of the story.
So how many times did you actually go see him in prison?
3 times. I've spent a total of 15 hours with him in person. I didn't even know how many phone calls. He was calling me 3 times a week, then it went down to 2 times. And then as the book was done, he would call once a week. I talked to him, it'll be 2 weeks tomorrow was my last conversation with him. And then the mini letters that he sent me. The letters were 10, 12 pages long, where he just kind of poured things out to me, as you see, was reading the book. And he wrote the Ruzaks a letter because he's never apologized to them.
So there was just such a long, winding, convoluted road to the truth of which we'll never see the end. We will never know the full truth of what happened in the wee hours of the morning on that day in August 2018, because the only person privy to that information is Chris Watts, the perpetrator himself, and he has more than proven himself to be incapable of speaking the objective truth in any capacity. He often vacillates and deflects and projects the fault onto other parties so much that you can't really rely on anything he has to say beyond him confessing to the murders themselves, of course. You cannot rely on someone who seems so narcissistic and who appears to be such a high-functioning functioning sociopath to speak the truth when that truth would incriminate himself. That's not the way they're built psychologically. They're wired to do any and everything within their power to serve their own best interests at all times. They never take a break from that agenda.
Hey guys, my name is Shanann Watts. I live in Frederick, Colorado. It's absolutely beautiful here. My husband and I moved here back in 2012, so we've almost been here 5 years.
What I really admired about Shanann's character was her apparent drive and ambition. She was headstrong and assertive and talented, and a testament to her competence was that she was able to build her first home by the age of 25. That is remarkable.
I am confident, I am determined, and I'm successful.
She was fun, full of life. She did so many things. She had her hand in everything. She was amazing.
Love you guys. Have a great day.
She was also a master marketer and the type of person who refused to take no for an answer and who also refused to accept defeat, whether that be in sales, in her personal health crises, in her ongoing battle with her in-laws, or in her marriage. So for someone like Chris, who needed to feel in charge and who needed to feel validated at all times, and who eventually wanted to give up on their marriage and walk away, a personality type like Shanann's was an inconvenient nightmare to his evolving interests. She tried so hard to save their marriage, from purchasing self-help books, to working on better communication, to trying to mend the overarching issues with her in-laws, to trying to remain sexually intimate, to having a third child, to writing him love letters and just elevating him to no end. She really tried all the classic methods employed by one endeavoring to save a union, while Chris surrendered to his secret internal rage and became vengeful and self-absorbed. He betrayed her in the most sordid of ways, first with the affair, then by behaving cold to not only her, but also their young children, both under the age of 5. And finally, his ultimate betrayal came in the form of ending their lives altogether. These acts were clearly premeditated. There are a number of actions Chris took immediately after the murders, meaning the morning of, that for me solidify that all of this was premeditated and that he had a specific goal in mind when he executed those actions the night before. The first one we know of is that he contacted the girls' school. So Bella and Celeste were set to attend school, and he called the school the morning of their deaths and unenrolled them and informed the faculty that they would not be attending anymore. That is so idiotic for someone to do the morning after they kill their entire family. That alone makes it so apparent that you did it. If they were just missing, why would you call and unenroll them? And you did this before you even reported them missing. So the second action he took, which was equally as idiotic and revealing, was that he called their realtor to have a discussion about putting the house on the market. It's like I can't even fathom how anyone could make such a stupid mistake immediately after murdering someone. You're supposed to be doing all you can to cover the murders and your actions, not make it more apparent that you did them by proving you had motive and that you have a plot to have a life without them. He also looked up the lyrics to a Metallica song. This is the one that really gets me. And the song is called Battery. And here are some of the key lyrics. The one that freaks me out the most is lunacy has found me and can't kill the family, can't kill the battery. Very, very telling lyrics. And the fact that he looked it up immediately after he did it shows that this is his mindset. This is what we're not seeing. This is the insight into his psyche that we're not getting from him because he's lying, he's putting on a mask. So this song sort of expresses what he was feeling in the moment. And finally, proof that he was the least bit concerned about his family that morning, whether they were missing or whether they were dead. He texted his mistress. He continued his relationship with his mistress. He texted her that morning and carried on their relationship, and I believe some of the text messages were indicative of looking forward to their future together. However, the most damning piece of evidence that proves this was all premeditated is in a text message he sent to his wife before she was murdered. Days before he murdered her in cold blood, he sent her a picture of a Barbie doll with a sheet over it, basically replicating a dead body. And it's the most sinister thing I have ever seen. These are those situations where we tend to give people the benefit of the doubt too often. If my husband sent me some shit like that out of the blue, after weeks of fucking being weird, not answering my calls, being cold, being unresponsive, not wanting to touch me, if he sent me a doll with a sheet over it, I would have been out of there. I'm sorry. I know you're not supposed to judge. I know hindsight is 20/20, but I'm just the type of person, I have that sort of I just have a low tolerance for bullshit, and that's just creepy. That's totally out of character, and she knows he had been acting out of character for weeks leading up to this. He's totally gone cold on her, totally gone cold on the kids. So that shows a certain level of detachment that he has from her emotionally, and that picture would have freaked me the fuck out, and I would have been out of there. All of those things he did the morning of, directly in the wake of murdering his family and disposing of their bodies, culminate to prove he had plans for a future that did not include his former family. They included his mistress and probably several other dreams and fantasies he was living internally at the time, but it also proves he had been plotting it for a while. And all of those really specific things he did that morning were things he had planned to do all along. It's just that Nicole Atkinson came and threw a wrench into his plan and messed up his storyline. He is completely wigging out here. Look at his face. He's petrified. He is literally caught on film red-handed loading his wife's body. And the mere fact of that, even though the officer and the neighbor haven't picked up on that yet, just the fact that he knows that's what he's doing in the film, he's freaking out because he's panicking and worrying if they might see any tiny thing that will catch him up. He's swaying back and forth, he's holding his head because those are self-comforting gestures, and it helps to decrease his anxiety because he had got so agitated he couldn't stand still. So holding his head sort of helped him to ground himself and to be more stable, because his hands were shaking, his heart was racing, he was sweating, you see him licking his lips. It's so fucking bizarre that they have this on footage. Can we just talk about how elaborate his ruse was? How much of a performance he put on in the presence of Shanann's best friend Nicole, and the presence of the police officer, and the presence of the neighbor with the surveillance footage of him loading his wife and kids. Is insane the way he was able to keep a straight face the entire time. He really only cracked once while they were all viewing the surveillance clip. It's sinister. It is hair-raising how straight-faced this man is and how he's able to function so normally. This is the most bona fide proof that he is someone who is incapable of feeling empathy in any capacity. That is a sociopath or a psychopath, but I believe he's a sociopath. I believe the environment that he grew up in nurtured him into becoming a sociopath. Another unsettling aspect of this case is involving Cindy Watts, Chris Watts' mother. Not so much the father, because he seems like a doormat and he seems to be walked over. He seems very soft-spoken and seems very docile for him to be a man, to be the head of the family. The mom seems to be the more assertive, headstrong, in control one. And it's funny because those qualities that she saw in Shanann that she hated are probably the ones that most reflected herself. That headstrong, strong-willed, assertive, bossy character personality that Shanann took on. And I find it interesting that Shanann could have even reminded Chris a lot of his mom, and his mom seems to be like a cavilling, needling figure who is kind of overbearing and kind of emasculates the men around her. And I think Shanann might have had a little bit of that quality inadvertently because she was such a boss. She was so in charge. She couldn't help but be herself. It's not her fault that she was assertive, that she was ambitious, that she was competent. And I think those qualities Chris might have saw in Shanann reminded him of his mom and reminded him of what he saw growing up, which is his mom emasculating his father. I just find a lot of what Cindy Watts says and does very disturbing, and it's very indicative of why Chris might have turned out the way he did. For instance, the peanut incident. Shanann took the kids to North Carolina to visit her parents and to visit Chris's parents. This is during that 5-week stretch where she was away from Chris, where he kind of heated up things with his mistress and became really cold towards Shanann. During that stay in North Carolina, Shanann took the kids to visit Chris's parents, their grandparents. And during that stay, despite knowing that Cece, Celeste, the youngest baby of Chris and Shanann, despite knowing Cece was allergic to peanuts, Cindy Watts placed peanuts out around the house in the vicinity of the child where she had easy access to them, and also served ice cream with peanuts in it to the children who were also present at the time. And it's just like, what the fuck? Like, who? It's just like, who would do that? That is evil. That's kind of homicidal if you think about it. That's a little homicidal in and of itself. That's a little, I don't even know what to call that. That is disturbing. That's like something out of a Lifetime movie. So when you hear stuff like that and you hear how she intentionally set it out, not only just to get at Shanann and piss Shanann off, but also to possibly harm the child, it's no surprise the way things took such a dark turn with Chris, especially if there's this constant wedge being drawn between Chris's family and Shanann, which was there from day one. Chris's parents didn't even attend their wedding because they were so opposed to the union between Chris and Shanann from day one. So apparently that only was exacerbated over time, and that only intensified over time to the point where this woman is trying to sabotage Shanann and trying to actively harm their children just to spite Shanann. She's that vindictive and she's that vengeful that she would put the child in harm's way just to prove a point. That is narcissism at its finest. And so there are several text messages that Shanann sent, just heated text messages to Chris and to her friends describing the incident with the peanuts in North Carolina. This triggered a big fight with the in-laws, and Shanann kept the grandkids from the in-laws following that incident. Also, following that incident, Chris's mom, Cindy, and his dad both blocked Shanann on Facebook, and the dad did not attend Cece's birthday, I guess following the incident, despite Shanann not uninviting him. So naturally he's going to side with the mother because that's the person who emasculated him. He sort of marches to her tune, so of course he's going to follow anything Cindy sets forth as law. She dictates and he follows. And so we see that pattern throughout the entire documentary and throughout all the evidence that was exposed afterwards. I could not begin to tell you what I would have done if I was Shanann in that situation and this woman knowingly set these peanuts out and my daughter was deathly allergic to them. I could not promise you I wouldn't have done something on site, on the scene. So I commend Shanann for taking the actions that she did, which was just, taking her children away to a safe place and refusing to let Cindy Watts see them. In consideration of that horrific fight with Shanann Watts and Cindy Watts regarding the peanut situation in North Carolina, it makes sense that Chris's issues with Shanann were manifold. He had multiple issues with her, and they were all big issues to him in his mind. He didn't see them as things that could be worked out or that could be improved. He just saw it as just another nail in the coffin, so to speak. So when he got to North Carolina, in that final week of their vacation in North Carolina, he joined them after like 5 weeks, I believe. And Shanann was pissed because when he got there, he was still really cold towards her. Did not kiss her, did not make love to her, despite being away from her from 5 weeks. That's when you know something is not right. When your man is not all over you after 5 weeks of separation, you know something is going on. And she rightfully suspected that he was getting intimacy from someone else, and she was completely accurate. But where I draw the line is when he was treating the kids coldly. So you know there's something not right going on there. And that's when you need to evaluate everything, take a step back, and probably separate. Because once he starts treating the kids cold, something's not right there. So you see Chris was probably siding with his parents in that scenario because he already had so much animosity and so much secret resentment built up in him against Shanann. He even got to the point where he told Shanann, despite being excited about their new baby on the way, he got to the point where he even told her he was fine with just having Bella and Cece and that he wasn't ready for another child. Anytime a guy says that to you after you're already carrying that new child, that is reason for concern. Cindy Watts is a character, and a lot of the things she says in the interviews and phone calls and in the letters following the conviction are very troubling, because they look to me that she is continuing to coddle her son as though he is some innocent, wronged victim in the relationship, as though he was in an abusive relationship and was driven to killing Shanann. If that was the case, then why would he harm his girls in that manner? You can listen to a few clips from the interview here, and the way she sort of paints this picture of Shanann as sort of the reason behind her own murder is very troubling. It's very disturbing that she would openly express this.
When and where did he meet Shanann?
They met, and he liked her, she liked him, but I don't think that it was love at first sight or anything. They took a little while and I guess got to know each other and, dated. It was always a little strange that she always said a lot of things about Chris in front of me that I didn't like. Like, this isn't the kind of person I would date. He doesn't know how to do this, or he doesn't know how to do that. He looks like a skater boy. Look at his hair. Look how much stuff he puts on his hair. It was just on and on and on, and I just got a bad feeling.
And they got married in 2012. Did they get married in North Carolina?
They did. Mm-hmm.
How was that?
No, we didn't attend.
Really?
Mm-mm. We didn't attend because Shanann and I just couldn't get along. And I didn't like the way she treated him.
You think Chris loves Shanann?
Oh God, he loved her.
Shanann's pregnancy, and what did Chris tell you about that? Was he excited?
No, I don't think he was.
It seems to me that all along, Chris's mom, Cindy, may have fostered animosity between Shanann and Chris by constantly making Shanann out to be some sort of villain and using their rift as an example of how she's no good. And she just does all these little passive aggressive things to stir up a rift between them so that there wouldn't be peace. It was a destructive and divisive mentality she had because she wanted to separate Chris and Shanann all along. She just probably didn't realize it would end in the way it did. But she's definitely guilty of fueling the flames and fostering animosity between the two families. And it started from the wedding.
Ronnie called me and said that they're missing, and I thought, I don't believe it. I didn't believe they were missing. I believed that she was going to punish Chris. she was just going to punish him, take the girls, and just punish him. I had no idea of anything else. Christopher called.
We just want you to know we're behind you. Yes. And that we support you. We support you 100%. We know what she was like. Okay? We just love you. And they can record all they want.
I know, but just remember, like, she was a wonderful woman too. Okay.
We know that.
Like, I don't want the lasting memory of anybody to be like something that was.
No, none of it. Take care of yourself. Be safe. Please be safe. Please be safe. Because I just can't deal with this. If you're not safe, we just want you to be safe.
It's natural you'd want your child to be safe, and prison is a dangerous place, but he hasn't ended up there because he hasn't paid some parking fines. It just seems a bit bizarre to me that there's such a focus on his safety that his mother says it 5 times.
It also just makes me cringe and shudder when I hear the way she talks to Chris after his conviction and after he's sentenced to like 5 life sentences. To hear the way she talks to him like he's a child in need of protection. She's just begging him to be safe in prison. I'm just like, I can't fathom. I just can't. It just makes me wonder, does she have any regard for the actions he took? Does she have any regards for the 2 small angels who were brutally murdered and left in a dark, remote, disgusting, squalid, crude oil tank? How can you possibly beg for him to be safe and coddle him and call him sweetheart and darling? It's beyond my comprehension at this point. That's so far beyond a mother's love. That is something sick and twisted, and I think it's indicative of why he became what he became. They have a very dysfunctional family dynamic.
We love you. And we forgive you, son.
Nicole Kessinger has been named by many people online as having something to do with the murders. And while I think that's a plausible conclusion to draw, because she did seem to be the catalyst to why he wanted to kill his wife and kids, I don't think she was directly involved. I don't think she had anything to do with the plotting. I don't think she had anything to do with wanting them harmed. I think she just was there, and by virtue of being the mistress and this sort of fairy tale romance with him at the time, I think she helped to fuel his decision making. She helped to push him over the edge as far as wanting to get rid of the Shanann and the kids as soon as possible, even in the most irrational way possible. And there were a lot of grim and gory details that were left out of the Netflix documentary naturally and appropriately. They shouldn't have been included. But you can read the reports of the law enforcement and the team who retrieved the girls' bodies and Shanann's body from the work site. And some of the details are just heinous, such as the bloody sheet that Shanann was found in. He didn't stab her. He didn't shoot her. It was bloody because she essentially gave birth. I think Chris even mentioned that in his jailhouse interviews with the detectives in February 2019. He even acknowledged that his poor son, because we forget there is a 4th victim here, Nico, his unborn son, he even acknowledged that he was partially born when he tossed her into the hole. And it's just such a grim detail. I just can't fathom it. But also his poor little girls, when he put them into the tanks, he forced them through an 8-inch hatch. So I believe it was 8 inches in diameter, and he forced them through. And there was a picture showing the measurements of Bella's body as being at least 9 inches from shoulder to shoulder. So you can only imagine what he did to make her fit through that hole. And just the idea of them being submerged in crude oil and the things crude oil does to the body, does to the skin. It was reflected in the report when they tried to retrieve the poor little girls, and parts of their skin came off in the process. It's just one of those things that is so out of this world that you can't even begin to fathom it.
It breaks every covenant of marriage and love and parenthood.